I've been talking a lot about different mechanics like motivation, hard work, and generally how to focus on something important to get that freaking pump in a game called real life. I talk a lot about different mechanics such as motivation, hard work, and in general how to focus on something important for that very fucking pumping. I do not give out advice on how to make your first million or how to seduce the best female. If you are so interesting, go to TikTok and zadanada you to $100 to some info tsiganu, and your life will not be prettier. Although in fact, everything will be the same, only in the pocket will be $100 less. And if to reduce the whole text of my advice to a minimum, the essence of each of them will sound as limit all your sources of easy, cheap dopamine to get what you put minimum effort. What the fuck is dopamine anyway? Dopamine is a chemical that our brain produces. When we anticipate pleasure or expectation of reward, it's worth it to you. A favorite scent, the smell of food perfume, or your favorite person and feel the joy. There is a release of dopamine in your brain, and this mechanic was invented by the developers in the early patches to motivate us to pump. And in order for us to have any motivation at all to play this game, and it was very necessary because Torah tiling was shitty. Lore was not yet a guide, especially too. The monsters were varied though, but the actual gameplay was monotonous grunting and gathering, and the difficulty was on the sauce lykgr type. Except you didn't respawn at the bonfire. Okay, moving on. Some sources of so-called light dopamine are more harmful, like alcohol, cigarettes, various illicit substances. And some are less so, like TV, a quick car ride. And of course, gamification, and no matter how many players do not release new patches in order to introduce new mechanics in order to break our balance to hell and make a lot of money on it. Despite all the negative consequences for gamers, the so-called balance still works. Because even the worst things, such as alcohol and smoking, have both negative and positive properties, because without positive properties, gamers would not use them. But usually in these cases, the negative consequences are much more than positive ones. And we can conclude that the original developers have worked out the balance quite well, and although the hands are trying to break it, they still can't destroy it completely. And since the industry was just beginning to develop, they did not have large budgets, which at first glance is bad, but at the same time it allowed them to take risks and do something truly original and innovative, because they did not have the burden of responsibility in the form of $150 million spent on the project. If they don't pay it off, then dozens or even hundreds of developers will be unemployed and won't be able to create anything at all. And I decided to tell you all this shit not to say, it used to be better. No, it's because I'm leading you to the point, to the idea that today's games are much more beautiful, and developed graphics and story have reached a new level. But nowadays games are created not so much by gamers but by marketers, because if a game fails, you can't just pick it up and start over, and that's why games are specifically introduced mechanics that motivate you to stay in it as long as possible. And ideally, in addition to the purchase itself, and you also donate their blood money. You just have to realize that the creator of games today is not some kind uncle who is so much on fire ideas to create something unique and breakthrough. The ideas that will wow gamers the world over are clod-hopping mooks who will do anything to recoup the money spent on that product. So what now gets in the game is no more actually playing it. I'm quite positive about gamers. For all the negative social attitudes, game making is quite good. Hobbies. Many people can't find a favorite thing to do as a teenager. Many families simply do not have the time and golda to do side quests of their child, and many. In general, there is some kind of horror at home, where there are always quarrels and generally some sadness, longing, sadness, and many find that very quiet harbor in the form of Fantasy-no-go world, where you are a prince who must save the queen and the whole world. Such an activity is much better than smoking and boozing behind garages. We have so much talk about gamers wasting their lives and achieving nothing. But no one talks about successful people who have achieved many heights by being gamers as teenagers. Henry Cavill for Viking, Elon Musk, Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps, and many others. And I'm not saying how many hundreds of thousands of people who later chose their procrastination path through IT. Professions in the past have been gamers. However, I am a living example of that. Next, gamers use video games to pump up important problem-solving skills. 2,099 years ago, there was a study of Dapna Bavli at lykgr University. And there they were all serious, scanned the bridge gamers and ordinary normies, conducted different tasks for attention and groups of gamers, showed a much better result. And in fact, already here we realize that demonizing games and exalting reading books looks as hypocritical as possible. It's just those people who don't want to accept something new, who have seen some negative consequences and use it as an ironclad argument, and, most importantly, this is just a reaction to the unwillingness to understand something new. But they see the speck in your eye, but they don't notice the encyclopedia in theirs. And it is precisely these starters who should pay attention to gamification in the first place. Since the study from 2017 years on the basis of the University of Montreal was proved that gaming contributes to the production of gray fluid in the brain of older people, which in turn slows down mental degradation in older people. There were control groups ranging in age from 55 to 75, and all gamers had positive results. Also, Iru is an excellent antidepressant, and this is proven by a study from 2012 on the TBMG platform. So, they did a study where two groups were given a therapy that was supposed to cure them of depression, and in the group where video games were added, the outcome was almost twice as good. And the biggest stereotype is that gamers are all cloistered and closed-minded people who have the lowest sociality stats. But the Guild of Scientific Researchers in here proves the opposite, as in 2017 year was conducted a study on the basis of GL University, where it was proved that the players of multiplayer games actually pump their sociality stats. So here's the deal, and generally to win multiplayer games you need to have leadership skills, smash less teamwork, communication, and many other passive skills. And what we have in the end? There are soccer players who get $1 million per official game for the fact that they run and kick the ball well, and socially it is maximally approved. But at the same time, the disdain for professional gamers remains, and people just as well lose decades on soccer training, and, in fact, reach the top of the few. So how is it worse than soccer or chess? There you go. I loved computer games in my childhood, and it helped me in my life because thanks to games I started to be interested in computers in general, which in the future allowed me in parallel with my main profession to master the second profession of a programmer, which is currently my main one. So guys, there are both disadvantages and useful different things in gaming. The whole point is that games in themselves do not carry any global evil. You just need to always know the measure when properly organizing your gameplay in the game called real life. You can engage in gaming, leveling the negative impact of this kind of occupation to a minimum, and at the same time deriving tangible benefits of the game. Not equal evil, but people for one reason or another make games themselves evil when they replace their real gameplay with the very virtual one. Thank you.